Perfect. All right, very cool. I will zoom in a little bit more. So the data jobs report, to give you a little bit of a background, is a project I've been working on since 2019. And I've shared the results of this report in a variety of different forums and formats. And most recently, what we've done is we've put this report into the same kind of document format that you saw Brandy used for the careers survey. And what our intent here is we want to make these reports available to folks after the summit. We'll talk a little bit about how we'll do that towards the end of the event so that you can actually dig through this and look at all the detail on your own. But I'm going to touch on a few key highlights from the report here in my session. And I've got about 12 minutes to do that. So again, it's going to be pretty brief, but kind of high level updates. Little bit of background, if you haven't seen me present on the data jobs report before, I started it again in 2019. So I've been collecting data for the last 4 years on data and analytics job postings that are out there. So the scope of this report, you can read about it if you get the report after the event, what titles are included, where I'm getting these from, things like that. But it's really data and analytics jobs. It's not data science. It's not data engineering. We're looking at data analytics jobs here. And I'm taking 100 roles every 6 months, and I'm scraping things like the education requirements, the skills that are required in the postings, whether it's a remote position or not, various attributes from the postings, and then summarizing those findings into a report so that we can kind of trend over time, see what skills are popping up more frequently, what skills are dropping off in job postings. What are the education requirements over time? Are companies looking for folks with a degree, without a degree? Is that changing over time? Things like this. So I'm going to show you a few examples of what's in the report, and then again we'll talk about at the end how you can get a copy of it. But again, 100 job postings every 6 months, finding these on corporate and major career sites, and focusing on data analytics jobs. Again, there's much more detail about what's in scope here in the scope section of this report once you get your hands on it. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit further even yet, just to talk a little bit about some of the key observations that I had as I put this particular report together that covered the better part of the first half of this year. So in terms of the positions, the 100 positions that I was looking at this year so far, big thing that jumped out, and you'll see this in the data, SQL and data visualization, just powerhouse skills in terms of how often they're referenced in position postings. They were actually these two skills. So if we forget about what the tool is, Tableau, Power BI, whatever, these two skills, SQL and data visualization, were actually listed as requirements in well over half of the positions that I looked at. So folks were asking earlier, like, hey, do I focus on one skill? Do I do multiple things like that? My hope is that this report, if you are just going to try to learn one or two, will give you a feel for maybe what one or two are to focus on based upon, what your own goals are. Now, there do continue to be lots and lots of skills mentioned in position postings, just in general, right? I mean, we see some position postings where you have 20 or 25 skills listed in the requirements section. But then you also see some position postings where there's one or two. And so how do you make sense of that? That's another purpose I have with this report, is to try to see kind of what does that 80-20 distribution look like? Like, what are the 20% of skills that are driving the 80% of mentions in postings? Because it does get hard to navigate all of these skills that are out there. And I think as a job seeker, or if you're looking to move up in the field, understand what it is that you want to focus in on and learn. And you'll see this come through in the data as well. A third point, something that really jumps out to me, is that ability to acquire, analyze, and then tell a story with data. This is more of an anecdotal feel for me, but having been a practitioner in the field for many years and reading through all of these job descriptions, I read through every single one that's in this report. I really get this feel that for data and analytics roles, regardless of seniority, folks are looking for, employers are looking for that ability to get the data. So you might be using SQL to acquire that data, analyze it. You might be using a data visualization tool. So again, I'm trying to tie those two things to the first two skills, and then tell a story with it, pull out the insights, articulate and communicate what you're finding to, an executive team or a manager, things like that. So that ability to acquire, analyze, and tell a story with data, I really get a strong feel reading these positions. Again, anecdotally, based upon my experience, that this is what kind of the golden ticket is in terms of what organizations are looking for. But that's a little bit of a subjective perspective. Industry experience. It's sometimes listed as a requirement. So let's say that it's an analyst role within, a manufacturing company. There might be manufacturing analytics experience or logistics analytics experience listed, something like that. Industry experience is sometimes required, not always, but it is oftentimes listed as a preferred skill. So my take on that is if you can start to be an analyst in your role in the industry that you're in, regardless of whether analyst is your title, maybe you're coordinator for logistics at a company, at a manufacturer, can you start to be an analyst in that role? Can you talk to your boss about how you can start to do some analytics work based upon the, maybe boot camp course content that you're taking or whatever? Can you become an analyst in your role even without the title? And then maybe have the best of both worlds, the industry experience as well as some analytics experience that you're picking up with. Again, just kind of my take on it. Curious to hear what others think about this as we go into the future speakers and panels here at the event. Data storytelling, I mentioned kind of that third leg of the acquiring the data, the analyzing it, and tell a story with it. Definitely seeing data storytelling with data, crafting a story with your data, crafting a story around your insights that's simple to understand. Seeing that pop up a lot in position postings. Another point here. In US dollars, this report is heavy on North American positions. Positions in the United States and certain states are starting to post the salary ranges, and you'll see some data on that in the report and what I'm finding. But the salaries in terms of US dollars are very strong. And even at the data analyst level, really strong starting salaries. And they've increased a little bit since the last report that I put together. This is, again, based upon what I'm seeing in the data, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then I am seeing fewer positions offering that fully remote option, but I'm still seeing a lot of positions offering hybrid work. And I'm curious, let me know in the comments if you think that's a trend that you're seeing as well. Just anecdotally, are you seeing more companies not list positions in your company as fully remote, but listing them as more hybrid? Is there more of a pressure to have hybrid positions than fully remote? Curious what everyone thinks in the comments. That is certainly what I see in my review of these positions every 6 months. So those are some key observations, and you can see that we actually have these reports nicely organized by section here. So if you get a copy of the report, you'll see that in the key observations section, everything I just walked through. I'm going to highlight just a couple of the data points. I'm going to switch over to the top 5 required skills. And so in this visualization, hopefully, I think you can see it okay. But what I've done here is I've added some spark lines to just show the trending of how many positions required each of these top 5 skills as of this last report over time. So we see SQL's number 1. So in this last report, 61% of the positions that I reviewed required SQL. And when I first started pulling this report together, actually, this was, I think, the second one I did. I've got this first half of 2020. We're at 32%. So almost doubled in that time period, first half 2020 to now, in terms of the number of positions that are listing SQL as a requirement. 55% of positions mention data visualization, some data visualization tool as a requirement. So I put the breakdown out there of what they were and what that trending looks like. Again, if you get the full report, you can see some further detail on that. But there's that first insight I shared, as a key takeaway. 61% requiring SQL, 55% some sort of data visualization. So you got data visualization and SQL, both in more than half of the positions. 30% requiring Python. This one jumped up quite a bit. Surprised me a little bit, and curious what comes out in future discussions and panels on this. But 30% of the positions, and these were just, remember, data analytics jobs, not data science roles or data engineering. 30% did list Python as a requirement. Excel dipped a little bit, still pretty strong, about a quarter positions with Excel. And then 24%, again, a quarter of positions listing industry experience as a requirement. And then several more positions listed as preferred. And there's some data on that in the report as well, on the preferred skills. So that's just a quick summary of the top 5 skills that were required in this latest report. I'm going to switch over to the salary ranges section for just a second. I know I only have 3 minutes left, and I probably will not take questions on the data jobs report because there's a lot to unpack here, right? I think the best thing to do is to take a look at the report on your own. And I think some of the stuff in the report will probably answer some of the questions that come up. And I do want to stay on time here. So just highlighting kind of the key things here. In the US, I mentioned that some states are now publishing salary ranges. So usually it comes in the format of a low end and a high end range for a position within the posting. What I'm able to do is take that data, and I've combined the data for the last couple reports here into one view. And I can put it into a scatter plot. And I've segmented it by manager roles and above. That's these light colored dots. And then in the yellow colored dots, I've combined analyst and senior analyst roles. And so, naturally, the salary ranges are a little higher for the manager roles and above versus the analyst and senior analyst. But there is some overlap in the center here. But we can get some really cool insights from this. And I think in particular, if you're going after that first role or transitioning into a data analyst role, there should be some strong motivation here because the salary data is looking quite good in US dollars. And also if you're going for, going from one data analyst role to another, or you're moving up, this can be good to help give you kind of a feel for, hey, is this salary I'm being offered kind of in the ballpark? I've got 1 minute left, and I'm going to use that last minute to show. I had a poll question that I put up earlier this week or maybe last week where I said, what's the average starting salary for a data analyst? I mentioned, hey, I'm going to be reporting some data on this in the event coming up. And this was what the distribution of answers looked like. The majority was 65 to 75K was the guess. And it is close to what it turned out to be. 16% had over 85K. And so to fulfill my promise here, I'm going to switch over to what the report showed. Now, I wasn't finished with the report yet, so I didn't know the answer even myself. But when I added the last set of data to my data set here, I took a look at over the last year, the last couple of reports, what the average range was. Again, we have a low end and a high end in most position postings that make this data available. For that data analyst level role, the low end range was 85 and the high end was 122. And that number did creep up a little bit, again, between the prior report and this last report. So I did want to share that. If you want to look at what the data is for these higher level roles, you can see that's in here as well, but that'll be in the full report. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you can get a hold of the full report if you'd like after at the end of the summit.